The studio is Halil Berktay, who is a historian and a professor specializing on the formation of Turkish nationalism and national memory at the Haldun University. Thank you very much for coming back. Let's go back to where we were. So we got to the point at which Turkey was on the losing side of World War I. The Ottoman Empire was being divided up. We had the Turkish War for Independence. How then did we see the creation of the Turkey that we see today?
Right. Previously, I was trying to make a distinction between two different projects. One of trying to revive or recover the empire, which was impossible, although some people did not recognize it. And the other was to try to retrieve from the shambles of empire a new nation state. One can think of this as a contrast between two very different projects promoted by Enver Pasha and Mustafa Kemal Pasha. Now, Enver had been the leader of the Unionists and virtually military dictator throughout World War I, ever since 1913, and he was an adventurist. He did not have a sense of what was realistic and what was possible, given the extent, the scale of the catastrophe that had befallen the empire in 1918. As against that, Mustafa Kemal he was actually much more circumspect and realistic.
And also he'd fought on the ground, hadn't he? So he had some idea.
Well, Enver had also fought on the ground in Libya back in 1911, etc. But yes, Mustafa Kemal was probably much more familiar with the ground level, grassroots realities of what was on the way to becoming Turkey. And so he realized that the only thing that could be done was perhaps to retrieve Anatolia and maybe a tiny portion of Rumelia, the Balkans, what is present-day Turkish Thrace. And secondly, he realized something crucial, that you could only do this on the basis of a new ideology. Now, the difference between the two men, these were both, on one level, men of violence. That's to say, they were professional officers. Their life business was being prepared to die, fighting and sending men in to die. So they were very familiar with, the grim realities of warfare was a part of their lives. But Mustafa Kemal had something extra. He was a man, apart from being a soldier, he was exceptionally a man of ideas and ideological creature. And he realized that this new project that he had in mind, it was impossible without the legitimating impact of a new world outlook. That is to say, national will, self-determination, sovereignty, national sovereignty. His key word that he kept repeating again and again after 19, virtually as soon as he landed in Samsun on the Black Sea coast to launch the national resistance, was, we need a new principle of government. Sovereignty belongs to the nation, meaning he was not spelling it out, but sovereignty does not belong to the Sultan, or sovereignty does not belong to any one person. He was, in effect, formulating what would become eventually a pillar of democratic politics in a nation state.
I want to talk a little bit about that ideology, because as you say, it was these ideas that he had that captured the people and which enabled Turkey to come.
He negotiated for them. The professional officers, he left Istanbul with a close headquarters retinue around him, and he landed in Samsun in mid-May 1919, and basically, he did two things. There were two forces in Anatolia at that time. One was the remnants of the old Ottoman military machine. That is to say, there were, various garrisons here and there, arms depots. The Mudros armistice had not really brought about a comprehensive demobilization in Anatolia, which was what the Allies were worried about. So on the one hand, there was what was left of the Ottoman professional army, the officers, the military conscription centers, etc. But at the same time, there were the local, how shall we say, the local gentry and notables, the leaders of local Anatolian society. They were excuse me, much less modernistic and relatively more conservative and traditionalist compared with the career officers from Istanbul. Their attitude to religion, for example, was comprehensively different. Secondly, they were sick and tired of unionist military rule over the previous decade.
So he was able to bring these together.
That became his great negotiating skill.
Which is a legacy that we see across Turkey still
he was able
today.
to hold the various local congresses, the Erzurum Congress, the Sivas Congress, etc., bringing these diverse elements of Turkish society together and persuading. On the one hand, he brought the professional military apparatus in line with, once more, military hierarchy. But secondly, he persuaded the representatives of local Anatolian society to give it one last try, so to speak, in the cause of independence.
And that's what we have today. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Thank you very much. That's Halil Berktay, a historian and professor. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.